Hello, dear friends. We are in Chol Moed Chag Pesach, the intermediary days between the beginning of Passover and the end of Passover. And I'd like to talk about why we say the Hallel at night on Pesach. Now, outside of Israel, Ashkenazim do not say Hallel at night on Passover, on the first night of Passover in the synagogue, but they do in the Haggadah. Or as in the Haggadah, you have also the Hallel. And the Hallel, of course, is said without a blessing in the Haggadah. But the Sfaradim actually say the Hallel in the synagogue outside of Israel too. Ashkenazim and Sfaradim in Israel do say the Hallel at the synagogue in its entirety with the blessing on the first night of Passover, and then again in the Haggadah, but without a blessing in the Haggadah. So I'd like to explain why this is, how it developed, and how I think I can give a very simple explanation to this phenomena. I want to start by reading the passages that we read from the Torah on the first and second day of Passover in Israel. So I am referring to what we call the Maftir. It's from Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, chapter 28, Tet Zayin to Kaf Hey, 16 to 25. And here it says, on the first month, B'chodesh Harishon, which of course is the month of Nisan, the month of Passover. B'arba'asar Yom LaChodesh, on the 14th day of that month, Pesach Lashem. It's the Pesach, the Passover, or the Paschal offering. Same word in Hebrew. U'b'chamisha Yom LaChodesh, and on the 15th day of the first month, meaning Nisan, Chag Shivat Yamim, there is a 7-day holiday, and Matzot Yochel, and that's the holiday where you eat the unleavened bread or the matzah. Bayom Rishon Mikar Kodesh, on the first day, it is a sanctified day, what we call a Yom Tov, where work is prohibited. Kol Melachat Avodah Lo Tasu, no work should be done. And of course, later on, it'll say that also on the 7th day of Passover. By Yom HaShvi Mikar Kodesh, the 7th day too. Okay, so that's the first source. So it's interesting. It sounds like the Pesach or the Paschal offering is on the 14th. And then the festival of Chag HaMatzot, festival of the Matzot, seems to be on the 15th for 7 days. But now let's look to another source, which is Vayikra. And Vayikra, chapter 22, so it says, these are God's designated festivals that you should read them or designate them in their proper times. B'chodesh Harishon, again, the first month of Nisan, of Nisan, yes. B'arba'asar Yom LaChodesh, on the 14th day, like I said before, but here it actually places it in time. Ben ha'arabayim, 14th day at dusk, meaning in the evening as the sun is setting. Pesach Lashem, that is the time of the Passover or the time of the Paschal offering, the 14th at night. And then on the 15th day, on the 15th day, that is the festival of the Matzah, Chag HaMatzot, for 7 days. On the first day, it is a sanctified day where you don't do any work, and also on the 7th day. So here in the second Makor, the second source, it's clearer. It's the 14th at night. Bein Harabaim you start, from when the sun goes down. Now, usually in our tradition, when the sun goes down, it's the next day. But as you know, in the temple, sometimes the day started in the morning and continued until the evening, including, for instance, the service of the temple started in the morning with the Tamid Shalboker, which is the eternal offering, the Olah, the Tamid, which was given in the morning, prepared in the morning, and brought on the altar in the morning too. And then you had the afternoon Tamid, which was brought in the afternoon. And of course, it continued burning in the night all night into the morning, and then the next morning they would clear the remains. So in the temple service, sometimes you do have a service that starts from the morning and goes to the evening. But normally in our holidays, it was evening, it was morning. But here, what you have here is basically it seems two different days. You have one day which is called the Day of the Paschal Offering, Pesach, and it's considered a holiday by itself, and it is at night. Whereas the festival called Chag HaMatzot, the festival of the unleavened bread, is a 7-day festival which starts in the morning. Now, the Paschal offering is also, you're not allowed to have chametz. That's the way we do it today. From the 10th hour in the morning, already we don't eat chametz. From the 10th hour or the 11th hour, depends how you would. It's approximately the 10th hour in the morning. From the Torah, I think it's the 12th hour. Rabbinically, it's earlier. And we don't need chametz, and then we don't have benefit from chametz, and etc. to keep us away from the deadline. And and that's the way the Paschal offering is also brought, because it says al matzot morim yuchlu. It's supposed to be eaten with unleavened bread and with the bitter herbs. But even so, as a holiday, the time of the Paschal offering is its own holiday. So, and that's the way the Torah seems to designate it, which is very interesting. And I just want to look for one more source, if I could find it quickly. And of course, we read that one from Bamidbar every day. One moment, if I can find it quickly. Okay. Okay. Here it has it also, that the Chag HaSukkot is 7 days, but also this is taken from Shmot 34, but the Torah says specifically, Lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi lo yelin laboker zevach Chag HaPesach. Do not bring offerings with chametz. In general, the offerings in the temple were not with leavened bread. There are two exceptions to that rule. One was the Korban Todah, Thanksgiving offering, which had both mostly matzah, but also unleavened bread. And then, of course, there's also the 2 loaves brought on Shavuot, which were purposely made of leavened bread. But all the rest of the offerings in the temple were from unleavened bread. Okay, so what does this mean? What does mean is basically like this. You have the 15th at night. That is called Chag HaPesach. It is the festival of the Paschal offering. And from the 15th in the morning, the rest of the 7 days are called Chag HaMatzot. Now, the interesting thing is today we call it all Passover, Pesach. But the Torah calls it Chag HaMatzot. And even if you look in our Siddur, in our prayer book, it is referred to as Chag HaMatzot. We always, Siddur, the prayer book, always calls it Chag HaMatzot. It never calls it Chag HaPesach, even though it's become a popular way to call it. We call it Passover. It's called actually the festival of the unleavened bread. This would now explain why we say Hallel. You see, we say Hallel on every holiday from the Torah. So if you're going to say that the 14th at night is a separate holiday, even though it's just positioned together with the 7 days, and they're also, you're not supposed to eat unleavened bread at that time, so it's very similar. But it turns out in the end, there's 2 holidays: the celebration of the Paschal offering, which is in the evening, and then the rest of Sukkot, the rest of Pesach, or the rest of Chag HaMatzot, I should say, which happens from the 15th in the morning. So, because the Paschal offering can be eaten all night. So those are the 2 parts, and because of that, it makes sense then that we would have a full Hallel at night on the 15th, marking Chag HaPesach, and another full Hallel on the 15th in the morning, marking the beginning of Chag HaMatzot. As you know, the rest of Chag HaMatzot, the last 6 days, we say what's called an incomplete Hallel or a half Hallel for various reasons, which I will not go into right now. Now, why then would we have it again in the Haggadah? Now, these reasons seem to be the way it was understood in antiquity, that the Hallel would be recited the first time when you brought your sheep or prepared your sheep for the temple. So people would say the Hallel at that time too, thanksgiving to God. And the second time would be when we would recite, um, when we would actually do the Paschal offering in the temple at night. Again, we would say the Hallel. So because there were two Hallels actually, which were done on the 14th during the day and at night. So we remember both of these by doing two at night, one of them in the synagogue and the other one without a blessing because we don't have the Paschal offering today as part of the Haggadah. And I assume that when we get the Paschal offering again, if it returns to our ceremonies, again it will be a full Hallel with the blessings as well. And just to mention, by the way, that this was actually the way it was done in temple times. And the proof of that, I heard from somebody that in the book of Jubilees, if you look, I think it's chapter 49, or if I remember correctly, chapter 49 or 50, as the member of, as the, as I was saying, I want to point out this very interesting source, which shows that basically the way that we do the Haggadah today is very similar to the way it was done already while the temple was standing in the Second Temple period, because the Book of Jubilees appears to it's an apocryphal work, which means it's not part of our canon of our Hebrew Bible, written by Jews, of course, all these apocryphal works in the Second Temple period. This one appears to be somewhere in the Hasmonean dynasty. So I just want to show you one thing here where he's describing the book of Jubilees, he's describing what is mentioned in the book of Exodus, Shemot, chapter 12, how there was, of course, there was a plague that was grievous in Egypt. There was no house in Egypt where there was not one dead. We're talking about the Makat Bechorot, the plague of the firstborn, the last of the 10 plagues. And then he writes, all of Israel was eating the flesh of the Paschal lamb because that's what they did. They were at home and they killed the sheep and they put the blood on the two sides of the doorpost and the top, and God passed over their houses and only smote the firstborn of the Egyptians. All of Israel was eating the flesh of the Paschal lamb. They were supposed to, together with matzah and bitter herbs. They were drinking wine, which it does not say in Exodus chapter 12. And they were lauding, which means they were giving thanksgiving to God, in Hebrew, Hallel. They were making blessings, brachot, and giving thanks to the Lord. They were praising, blessing, and giving thanks to the Lord God of their fathers, and were ready to go forth for the yoke of Egypt and from the evil bondage. Now, what's very interesting here is that whoever the anonymous author of the Jubilees was, it's strange. Why would he add this in when he is as if recording what it says in the book of Exodus? And it doesn't say in the book of Exodus that the Jews drank wine while they ate the Paschal offering or were praising, blessing, and giving thanks to the Lord. It doesn't say that either. The answer is quite obvious. You say this fellow probably came to the temple and he was there on Passover. And he knew that on Passover, together with the Paschal offering, we drank wine. Today we call it the 4 cups of wine. And he also knew that we said the Hallel, the prayer of thanksgiving. So he assumed this is what they did from time immemorial. So here we have a live testimony of the fact that already, while the temple was around, somewhere in the Hasmonean dynasty, the first or second century before the Common Era, they were already drinking what we call the 4 cups of wine with the Paschal offering and giving and reciting blessings and giving thanksgiving, which we call the special Hallel benediction, which was happening at that time. And of course, The final reason why we, of course, have the full Hallel that night is because we left Egypt at that night. We left Egypt in the middle of the night. And that's a very important reason to say the Hallel to show gratitude that night. So again, you have Hallel, which is unusual for that night. And originally it was twice. It was when they were preparing the offering for the Paschal offering, and also when they ate it in the temple. And the one that ate in the temple was, of course, to thank God for taking us out of Egypt. And as we prepared it, we also said the Paschal, the Hallel, and therefore in our liturgy it is actually there twice. But as I said, because of that night is considered a festival by itself, as different than Chag HaMatzot in a sense. Therefore, it makes sense that we have a full Hallel at the night and a full Hallel in the morning, and then what we call a non-full Hallel for the last 6 days. Shalom, shalom everyone. Chag Sameach.